más preámbulo, me gustaría presentarles a Loris. Loris hace parte de la oficina de admisiones de London School of Economics. So thank you so much, Loris, for accepting our invitation. It's a pleasure to have you here, and you can start the presentation.
Thank you very much, Carolina. We just start sharing my screen. And hello from London, everyone. So my name is Loris. I'm LSE Student Recruitment and Study Abroad Officer. I will be giving you a brief introduction to the school today. So what we teach, how we teach, and so on. And then I'm going to talk about what we're looking for in applications as well. And as Carolina mentioned, there's going to be a Q&A at the end, so I can answer your questions. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the very first thing I like to talk about is something very basic. So what is LSE? We are the London School of Economics and Political Science. We're a specialist university teaching social sciences, not just politics and economics. We have 25 academic departments that teach anything from accounting and anthropology through to history, geography, psychology, management, international relations, and so on. And many of these subjects were actually pioneered at LSE, including international relations as an example. So LSE is a very influential, a very inspiring place to study these subjects. A bit about LSE's history. So we were founded 126 years ago by the Fabian Society. You can see them in this picture. They are the UK's longest existing think tank. They created LSE back then to study the causes of inequality and poverty and issues of governance. This is our motto in Latin, and this means understanding the causes of things. This motto is very much behind how we teach and how we do research to this day. So whatever you choose to study at LSE, whether it's law, anthropology, politics, and so on, you will be looking at problems in the world, in your country, and so on, and you will be trying to find solutions to those problems in order to create a better society. Some basic facts about LSE. We have approximately 11,000 students in the heart of London. Across the board, 70% of our students come from outside the UK. Actually, at the postgraduate level, we have 6,000 students and 80% of our graduate students come from outside the UK. So we're probably one of the most international universities in the world. And this is a very important aspect of your education with us. We have over 140 graduate programs, so master's and PhD programs. I'm not going to list all of them in this presentation. And as I mentioned, we have 25 academic departments. The last point there, we are a member of the University of London. That means basically that if you are studying at LSE, you automatically become also a University of London student, and that gives you access to resources, for example, at King's College, UCL, SOAS, and so on. So you are part of a bigger family of students as well. Now, we are very international, as I mentioned, but it's not just our students that come from around the world. Also, our staff members, approximately 40% of our staff comes from outside the UK. We had, in the last academic year, 45 students from Colombia. We generally have around 50 to 60 students from Colombia. So if you want to meet others from Colombia, you can. We have a very active Colombian society as well, if you want to kind of promote your culture and teach other students how to cook Colombian food and so on. But you can also avoid Colombians if you just want to meet students from other countries. There are so many countries represented on campus, and being at LSE for 1 year really gives you the chance to make friends and network with people from around the world. We also, on the academic side as well, we have regional research centers, including the Latin American Caribbean Center, and they kind of carry out research, interdisciplinary research on specific parts of the world. So they may be dealing with, let's say, the financial crisis in specific countries in Asia or Latin America, and they bring together academics from different departments to kind of do this research. Now, these are the 25 academic departments that we have at the school. This is just to give you an overview of the subject areas that we cover. Again, a big variety. I mentioned some of them earlier. We have kind of more obvious departments like government, politics, economics, history, and so on, but also very specialist departments like media and communications, gender studies, the European Institute, and so on. All of these departments offer PhD programs, and all of these departments offer many master's programs. So one department may offer 1 master's program, some departments offer 8 master's programs. So there's a lot of variety. The Language Center does not offer any master's or PhD programs, but they offer language courses in 10 languages, which you can study on the side. In terms of the different types of graduate study at LSE, just to give you an overview, so we have a graduate diploma in accounting and finance, if you want to kind of convert to that discipline, but the vast majority of our master's programs are MSc, so Masters of Science programs. We have an LLM, that is our Master's in Law, a 2-year MPA, which is our Master's in Public Administration, and then an MPP, our Master's in Public Policy. Now, the vast majority of our programs, our MSc programs, are 1 year long full-time. So you would be coming to LSE for 1 academic year, generally from September to August, but some programs start slightly earlier or finish slightly earlier as well. At the PhD level, we have 2 types of PhD programs, MRes PhDs and MPhil PhDs. I will explain the difference in a second. And we have a number of executive master's programs, double master's programs where you spend 1 year at LSE and 1 year at a partner institution, and then our visiting research program, which is not very relevant in this case. Right. So just to show you here the kind of variety of programs that we offer, I just chose 3 random departments at LSE just to show you, for example, the Department of Geography and Environment. As you can see here, they have 5 PhD programs and they have a very large number of master's programs. Government is the same. They have 1 PhD program in this case, but many master's programs and so on. So if you know, for example, that you really want to focus on something very specific, let's say you're interested in politics, but you're really interested in conflict, you can apply for a master's degree that focuses on conflict studies. The same for geography. Again, we only teach economic geography, human geography at LSE, but we have very specialist master's programs within that area of study. Your very first step before you apply to LSE is to really narrow down your choices to 2 programs. You can only apply for 2 programs at the same time. And we have over 140 programs, so you need to do some research. On the website, all of our programs appear like this. As you see on the screen here, it just shows a random program, again, comparative politics. On these pages, you get a lot of information about the content of individual master's programs. You can see the modules that you're going to be doing. You can find recommended readings as well. So do spend a lot of time on these pages to understand exactly which program or programs are most relevant to you. And you need to show that you've done this research when you're making your application, because you're going to be writing a letter of motivation that has to reflect your knowledge of the degree program. In terms of teaching at LSE, so how things are, what you should expect for master students, you will have a mixture of lectures, classes, and seminars. Lectures can be quite large. You may have, let's say, 80, 90 students in a lecture, but then classes and seminars are very small. You're going to have generally 10 to 15 students in a class or a seminar. The academic year is divided into 3 terms at LSE. So we have our Michaelmas term, which is from September to December, and the Lent term from January to April. Most teaching takes place in these 2 terms. And then our summer term is mostly used for revision, exams, and then writing your dissertation. So you have 1 academic year in most cases, and you need to complete a number of modules and also submit a dissertation, which can be anywhere between 8,000 to 15,000 words. Every week, you're going to have to do a lot of reading. You may have to do presentations. You may have problem sets. You may have to write essays. Some essays count towards your final grade. And then the majority of your exams take place in the summer term, so generally in May and June. And for some courses, your exams may count for 100% of your final grade. So it can be quite stressful, but there's a lot of preparation and a lot of work before you reach the exams period in the summer. On average, depending on your degree program, you need to spend approximately 20 hours a week doing guided independent study. So you're going to be constantly busy. You're going to have to be very self-motivated and very kind of proactive with your studies. There's going to be a lot of work for you to do. It's manageable. If you manage your time well, you can also enjoy your time in London. Moving on briefly to PhD programs. So we have 2 types, MPhil PhDs and MRes PhDs. The duration varies by the type of program. In both cases, in your first year, you have a number of taught courses. You may have to write a long essay by the end of the first year, and then you progress to PhD candidate status. By the end of your 3-year program or your 4-year program and so on, you will be submitting a long thesis, your PhD thesis, And throughout your program, you have support from your supervisor and also our dedicated PhD academy. So at LSE, in addition to your academic department, we give you support from the academy when it comes to methodology and so on, but also with professional development, because not everybody who does a PhD wants to become an academic. We want to make sure you can be successful with whatever you choose to do afterwards. So moving on to the second part of this presentation, why study at LSE? What makes LSE special? Now, because in the last academic year, we were celebrating 125 years since our founding. I'm going to play a very brief video celebrating some of our achievements.
COVID-19.
Over the next 4 years,
the richest 1% controls more wealth now.
The UK has fallen into its largest recession.
Real risk. A trade deal cannot be agreed with the UK.
About the danger of climate change.
Back to me, unfortunately, just to touch on some of these points. Our Nobel Prize winners are quite important to us. Many of them come back to LSE to give lectures. So before COVID, we had the former president of Colombia come to campus and give a lecture. So we do keep in touch, and you may get a chance to interact with some of these people during your time at LSE. At the same time, LSE academics publish hundreds of books and articles across the social sciences. So you're not just coming to LSE to read old textbooks, you will be interacting with leading authors in your discipline. Research is very important to what we do, to who we are. Many LSE academics work as expert advisors for companies, for governments, or NGOs, and so on. And the media very often turns to LSE academics to comment on what's happening. So again, it's a very inspiring place to be during your studies. A very important LSE tradition, something that's quite interesting and very important to the student experience, is our public lecture series. So normally, every night during term time, we have people like presidents, prime ministers, opposition leaders, company leaders, activists, journalists, and so on from around the world coming to give lectures at LSE. And this is a chance for you to go along, criticize, ask questions, and interact with world leaders. During COVID, of course, all of these are taking place online, and you can access them from wherever you are in the world as well. Couple of things about the LSE campus. For those of you who know London, we are right next to Covent Garden, very close to the British Museum, so really at the center of London. And all of our teaching and learning takes place in this very compact area that you see on the map here. So you're not going to have to walk far from one lecture to another. And on campus, we have amazing resources for our students. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. The LSE library is called the British Library of Political and Economic Science. We have 5 floors with over 4 million printed items. We have a very active students' union with over 200 clubs and societies doing sports, languages, cultures, and so on. We have well-being and support services on campus, so mental health support. We have a doctor and a dentist on campus, and lots of innovative study spaces around campus as well. Now, within the LSE library, you can see some pictures here. We have a center called LSE Life, which you can see on the picture on the bottom left. Now, LSE Life is a center in the library that gives you support with things like transitioning to the UK education system, writing essays that we're looking for at LSE, taking notes in class, critical thinking, and so on, doing presentations. So lots and lots of academic and personal skills that you need to be successful, not just during your time at LSE, but after you complete your studies as well. So there's a lot of support from day one. You don't have to worry too much about coming to another country to study. We're there to support you. And these are just some of the clubs and societies we have on campus. We have approximately 40 sports clubs and then over 160 societies that can be subject specific, like the Microfinance Society, or dancing. We have the Latin American Society, we have the Investment Society, our Pride, our LGBT Society, and so on. So these are ways for you to meet students who share your interests and to kind of engage in activities that can help you enjoy your time at the school. We are in central London. This is very important, again, to the experience at LSE. London, we see London as a global academic capital. There's many universities in London, lots and lots of students and lots of resources as well. So you have places like the British Library, which has every single book that has ever been published in English. It's free for students to use, and lots of specialist institutes offering additional lectures, libraries, and so on. So many things that are going to feed into your studies, and London is your wider campus during your time at LSE. Of course, the city itself is very interesting in terms of exploring, going out, going to festivals, lots and lots of things to do, but we don't have much time, so I'm not going to go into more detail here. When it comes to your careers, of course, the headquarters of many international companies, organizations, NGOs, embassies, and so on are based in London. We have very close links with employers, and we can help you to get work experience during your time at LSE, but also after you complete your studies. You continue to have access to our career services for up to 5 years. And LSE careers, apart from kind of bringing employers to campus and so on, they give you one-to-one support to write your CV, apply for jobs, prepare for interviews, and think about your your long-term career plans as well. So there's a lot of support on a one-to-one basis during your time at LSE. Okay, moving on to the last part of this presentation, which is not going to take very long. So applying to LSE, what are we looking for? Now, there are some basic points here to get started. So when it comes to applications for both master's and PhD programs, applications open in October each year. So if you want to join us in September 2022, applications will start this October 2021. For our master's programs, we don't have deadlines, we have rolling admissions, and that means that a program is open for applications up until the point that it has filled its spaces. So you need to apply early, and I would recommend you to apply generally by January or February. Try to apply as early as you can. PhD programs do have deadlines. They may differ, so make sure you check your PhD program on the website so you know when you need to apply by. On the application that you make online, you can apply for 2 programs at the same time. That's absolutely fine. It doesn't make a difference to your application. For master's programs, we don't have interviews. For PhD programs, we do have interviews. In terms of the minimum entry requirements, so I've put them on the slide here. You can also find them on the website. For the vast majority of our master's programs, we are looking for your licenciado or título profesional with a 4 out of 5. For economics master, for our masters in economics, we're looking for a 4.5 out of 5. If you want to apply for law, you need to have a degree in law or a doctor en derecho with a 4.2 out of 5. And if you want to apply for a PhD program, we're looking for a master's degree with a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 6, depending on the system at your university. Of course, you don't need to graduate before you apply at LSE. Many students apply during their last year at university in Colombia, for example. And if we make you an offer, there will be a condition on your offer. And we just say to you, basically, you have a place to study with us as long as you complete your título profesional with a 4 out of 5, for example. Now, some programs require a specific undergraduate degree or background. So, for example, if you want to apply for economics, you need to have a degree in economics. If you want to apply for finance, you need to have a mathematical background. But in many cases, for programs like international relations, gender, geography, politics, and so on, we accept students with any relevant social science background, and in some cases, students from any academic background. But all of this information you will find on individual program pages. So, for example, if you're interested in media and communications, you can see that we're looking for a degree in any social science, or in another field with professional experience in media and communication. So these can differ slightly by program, but all the information is on the website. The last thing here, English language, you don't need to provide English language test scores when you apply. We don't look at that when we're looking at your application. If we make you an offer, there will be an English language condition, and you can take a test at that stage to meet that. Now, in terms of the actual application and what you need to provide, we want to see your grades so far. So if you're in your last year of university, we want to see your grades from your previous 3 years. We need the contact details of 2 referees who are going to provide your references. These have to be academic references in most cases. If you graduated a long time ago, then they can be professional, but in most cases, they have to be academic. Then you need to write a statement of academic purpose. This is extremely important, and it's basically a motivation letter. I'm going to tell you more about it on the next slide. We want to see your CV. Now, you don't need to have specific kind of work experience. You may not have any work experience. That's absolutely fine for most programs. We just want to see your CV to understand everything that you've done so far. Then for some programs, for example, for economics, finance, management, and so on, you need to provide GMAT or GRE test scores. Again, check your program page because, for example, economics only accepts GRE test scores, accounting prefers GMAT scores, so make sure you're taking the right test. But for any other programs, you don't need to provide GMAT or GRE scores. If you're applying for a PhD program, in the vast majority of cases, you need to submit a research proposal and also a sample of your work. But there are some PhD programs that have different requirements. The last thing, the application fee of £80 covers both your choices. Once you submit your application, you get your application ID number, and then for master's programs, you get a decision within 8 to 10 weeks. For PhD programs, because it's an interview, it can take longer. But generally, within 8 weeks, you have a decision on your application. Now, the statement of academic purpose is extremely important for both master's and PhD programs. This is a very academic document. We want to see what your academic interests are and why you want to pursue a specific program. We want to see exactly how you expect to benefit and which aspects of your program you find interesting. You're not going to talk about everything you've done in your lives. Selectors really want to see that you understand what the content of the program is and how that relates to your academic interests. We give you a lot of advice on our website on how to write your statement of academic purpose, and it's really, really important. We get many more applications than we have spaces available, and many students have the same grades or really, really good grades in any case. So this, in many cases, is the most important document that helps us decide who to give a place to, basically. If you have any achievements, any unrelated kind of work experience, they are not very important. You can mention them, but whatever you choose to mention in your statement of academic purpose, make sure you kind of tell us a bit more. Don't just say, I worked for my local government for 2 months, full stop. We don't know what you were doing. You're not going to get a chance to tell us. So do say everything that's important in your statement of academic purpose. If you're applying for 2 programs, then you need to write 2 separate statements. They can be very similar, but try to tailor them to each program, essentially. Okay, so that's all from me. I've got some useful links. We have a virtual graduate open day coming up in November. That's a very good chance for you to find out more from specific departments about their programs, so do attend if you can. And then we have lots of videos and blogs on the website and our online, so our public events are all available online for you to access. And I think with that, Carolina, we can start receiving questions.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you so much, Loris, for this presentation. So we have received a couple of questions in our chat box. The first one is from Andres Bautista. He is asking, can I get conditional offer if I am missing the English requirement?
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't need to meet the English language requirement when you apply. We can make you an offer and there will be an English language condition. Yes.
Right, thank you. Andres has 2 questions. The first one is, does LSE offer more scholarships besides the 20% of Colfuturo agreement?
So LSE does have a number of scholarships for international students. The main source of our scholarships is our graduate support scheme, and that is based purely on financial need. It's not based on academic merit. It's based purely on financial need. I will send you a link to our funding pages so you can see what is available. Yeah, I'm going to pop in the chat in 1 second. Yeah.
Okay. And the second question from Andres is, I applied to a program that is currently closed. What can I do?
So if a program closed before you submitted your application, you wouldn't be able to submit an application. If you submitted an application and then your program closed, that's fine. So you're still being considered for your program. You may be placed on a reserve list if your application is very strong, but the places have been filled. But as long as you apply before the program closes, then you're being considered. So that should be fine. But basically, if you're working through the application form and let's say you have 1 page left, but then the program closes, you can no longer submit the application.
Okay. And Guillermo is asking, what are the financial options for a PhD? Does LSE have 100% scholarships for PhD, for example, international relations?
Yeah, so for our PhD programs, if you apply for a PhD program, as long as you apply by the funding deadline that is specified on the program page, you're automatically considered for LSE PhD scholarships. These are based purely on academic merit, not financial needs. So it's going to depend on the strength of your application, your research proposal, and so on. And if you get an LSE scholarships, we call them LSE studentships. That would basically cover your entire tuition fees and would also give you an annual stipend to cover expenses, basically. So it's a full scholarship. Not everybody gets it. There's a competitive process there, but you're automatically considered if you apply for a PhD at LSE. And this is for all subjects, not just for international relations, for any subject.
Understood. There are 2 similar questions from Maria and Angela. Maria is asking, do you think it will be easy to go with a family? I am married and I have 2 kids. And Angela is asking about any assistance from LSE for an international student with family, husband and family.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I cannot answer this question. This may depend on visa requirements as well. So for example, if you're made an offer for LSE, at that stage, you can get in touch with our international student visa advice team, and they can give you more information on what you can do in these cases. Because I'm not qualified to comment on these kind of situations, unfortunately. But there's nothing in place at LSE, for example, for your husband or your children in this case. So that it may be a bit more complicated than that. It doesn't depend purely on LSE in this case.
Right. Okay. Andres is asking, is there any agreement to study a language program before the postgraduate program, like a pre-master? language program?
That depends. So do you think Andres is talking about English language kind of preparation before the program? If you're
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so in that case, yes, we have we call them pre-sessional English courses. So if you're made an offer to study at LSE and you wish to kind of brush up on your English, we have pre-sessional courses that you can do. They take place just before the start of the academic year. But if your question kind of is referring to other languages, I mean, you can start after you join LSE. So our language courses generally start, I think, 3 or 4 weeks after the start of term. Yeah. Just to say, in addition to the pre-sessional English language courses, we have in-sessional English language support. So we have classes for current students. These are free to attend. And these are classes for academic English. I was actually teaching on one of them. So there's a lot of support so during your time as a student as well. So you can improve your essay writing and so on.
Okay, thank you for that information. Luis is asking, how has the pandemic affected the student life in LSE? And this is a good question. Which changes will last in the future?
That's a very interesting question. I mean, in the last academic year, in the previous academic years, the second half of the year took place completely online, and classes, lectures, everything was online. We did not reduce the number of services that we offered to students. So all of our services, whether that was workshops, English language classes, LSE careers, everything was still available online. Now, in the new academic year, we're going back to campus. Now, it's not going to be exactly as it was before the pandemic. So basically, our lectures, our big lectures are taking place online at the moment. But then small classes and seminars are taking place in person. We're basically following government guidance. It's a bit difficult to predict how things are going to be in 2022, September. But now, so next month that we're starting our new academic year, everybody's expected to be on campus, and there's going to be a blended model. It's difficult to say what will apply in 2022, unfortunately. Yeah, because things keep changing, and we're always kind of taking into account not just the rules in the UK, but also around the world, because again, the vast majority of our students come from outside the UK, so we need to kind of cater to everyone in a way. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Viviana is asking, is it necessary to send the original documents for the application, or is it necessary for the university to send them directly, like official transcripts?
Yeah. So when you make your application, when you submit your application, you just upload copies of your documents. So you don't need to submit the official documents as part of your application. You can upload copies yourself. If we make you an offer, then at that stage, you can start sending us your official documents so we can confirm your place, basically. You're going to get instructions about this from graduate admissions if you're made an offer.
Okay, perfect. Diane is asking, is it possible to apply for a master research or PhD program in economics with a bachelor's degree in economics, or is the master an obligatory requirement?
So our MRes PhD in economics is one of the few PhD programs that accept students who have just done a bachelor's in economics. So yes, you can apply. If you have a master's, good. But for the PhD in economics, you don't need to have a master's, basically. You can apply with your bachelor's. Now, there's a lot of competition for places, of course, but yes, they're happy to consider you with your bachelor's. For most of our other PhD programs, you need to have a master's, basically. Yeah.
All right, and Sarah is asking, in the Master of Science in Marketing, do I need the GRE or GMAT score?
So for MSc Marketing, yes, we accept both. So it's up to you which one you want to take. But basically, if you don't have a UK undergraduate degree, you need to provide GMAT or GRE scores, basically, for marketing. This information for all of our programs. Let's say if you open LSE MSc Marketing on the website, under key facts, you can see whether there's a GRE and GMAT requirement and what the exemptions are as well. But yes, for marketing, you need to have GMAT or GRE.
Thank you. Andres is asking, Could you give us some recommendations to write a good statement of academic purpose?
Yeah, so I will post a link in the chat. We have a page that gives you a lot of kind of detailed advice. I mean, the main point to think about is that it's a statement of academic purpose. It's all about your academic interests again. It's not enough to say, oh, I'm applying for the Masters in Comparative Politics because I really find it interesting. Which modules exactly do you find interesting? What have you done before that demonstrates your engagement with this kind of specific area of politics? I'm sending you the link in the chat now. Statement of academic purpose.
Okay, so I'm going to continue with the next question from Paula. She's asking, which is the difference between executive, graduate research, and graduate thought?
Very good question.
Programs.
They're quite confusing. So graduate taught are basically our master's programs, graduate taught master's programs. Executive programs are basically master's programs, but these are part-time master's programs, which are designed for people who have a certain number of years of work experience, and generally there's no funding for them. And then graduate research refers to our PhD programs. So graduate taught are our master's, graduate research, PhD programs, essentially.
Thank you. Jorge Penagos is asking, does LSE have a pathway program?
Jorge, can you please clarify what you mean by pathway program? I'm not sure what you would be referring to.
I think maybe it can be like the executive program or something similar to that, but I'm not sure.
Not sure. Yeah, if you want to kind of tell us what you mean, Jorge, so we can look at that.
Okay, Emilio is asking, if I have strong quantitative skills, but I graduate from a business career, can I still apply for a financial master's?
So for a master's in finance, generally for our master's in finance, we're looking for students who have a degree, a degree program in any discipline with good quantitative skills. So probably we're looking for your mathematical courses or your quantitative courses from your bachelor's degree, and then you also have to take GMAT or GRE. So yes, if you have a business degree, you can apply for a finance degree at LSE, for a master's in finance at LSE, as long as you've done quantitative courses and you can demonstrate that you have strong quantitative skills. Yeah.
Thank you. Angie is asking, is the conflict studies the scholarship for Colombian students still available?
So I suppose, I'm not sure. So if you're thinking about our Masters in Conflict Studies, so LSE graduate funding is open for all programs. Then there are some kind of specific program-specific scholarships. The final deadline to apply for LSE funding is generally in April. So you need to apply before April. And then, for example, Colfuturo have their own processes as well, but you can apply for the MSc in Conflict Studies and apply for Colfuturo, I suppose. So that's also an option. Yeah.
Okay. Mariana is asking, if I want to apply to a master and I have another previous master in Colombia, do the grades have to be of the last study, the master, or the undergraduate program?
So on your application, you need to provide your transcripts from both your undergraduate and from your master's. But basically, if you already have a master's and you're applying for a master's, you automatically meet the minimum grade requirements. So for example, even if let's say your bachelor's degree grade is slightly lower than the requirements, that's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean that you're guaranteed a place, of course, because you're always competing with other students. But if you have a master's, then you automatically meet the minimum grade requirement to apply for a master's. Yeah.
Great. Javier is asking, I would like to apply to a full-time master's degree in health economics. Which program do you recommend?
That's a good question. I mean, you have to probably look at the programs in our health policy department. As I mentioned on the website, for each of these programs, we give you a lot of information, and it's really kind of your responsibility to do this research, because when it comes to writing your motivation letter, your statement of academic purpose, you need to show that you've done your research. So spend some time on the website, look at the different programs within health policy, and then make kind of an informed decision as to which program you're applying for. But probably would be in the Department of Health Policy in this case.
Right. And we have a question about costs. What are the tuition costs?
Yeah, tuition fees, yeah. So the tuition fees for master's programs vary by program, and generally would be approximately from around £20,000 up to £35,000, depending on the program. So you can find the tuition fees for your program on the program page on the website. And then for living in London, generally we advise students to budget for approximately £1,100 to £1,300 per month to cover accommodation and living expenses, depending on your lifestyle. There's lots of things to kind of do to kind of reduce your expenses as well. So one thing is to get student discounts. We have a student discount card that you could get access to as a student. You get discounted transport as well. But many students work part-time during their studies. So your student visa allows you to work part-time as well. So if you're thinking about your living costs and you would like to work, that's absolutely fine. Many students work part-time during term time, and it's manageable as well.
Pedro is asking, do you think having 2 master's degrees will affect in a positive way an application for a PhD?
Good question. It really depends. I mean, it depends on the context, on what master's programs you have and what PhD program you're kind of thinking to apply for. Yes, it can only be a positive thing. So if you're applying for a PhD program at LSE and you already have 2 master's degrees, it would be interesting for you to kind of tell us what you learned and how these master's degrees better prepare you for your PhD program. So there's no kind of easy yes or no question in this case. We look at everything on its individual academic merit. So it's all about how you explain what you've done more than, you know, I've done this and this, I've got 2 masters. Okay, what were they? How did that make you more prepared or more interested in the PhD program?
The next question is from Daniela. As Colombians, do we have to do a quarantine for 10 days in UK? And is the cost of the hotel expensive? Is there some assistance from LSE for students who need to travel to London?
So at the moment, so if you're coming this September, Colombia is unfortunately on the red list. So yes, you would have to quarantine in a hotel. Now, in terms of support, we don't kind of pay for the hotel, but we advise students to defer the payment. So you pay later on. And if you're facing financial hardship, you can get up to £500 to go towards that. So this is if you're coming now. For next year, of course, it would be too early to know, but at the moment, this is what we're advising students. Yeah.
Thank you. Kevin is asking, is there any kind of scholarships for underrepresented minorities, such as Afro-Colombians and indigenous people?
So there are some kind of country-specific scholarships that are based on kind of on individuals donating money, for example, for specific groups. I'm not sure about specific indigenous people and so on. I think for Colombia, the only external scholarship that we have is partnership that we have is with Col Futuro. But depending on which country you are from, you may find some specific scholarships. So I'm sending you a link to country-specific scholarships in the chat now.
Thank you. Jorge explained a little bit better about the pathway program. So he said it's a pathway English program.
Okay, so what we have is our pre-sessional English courses. So you can start an English course before you start your degree program at LSE. And you can also meet the LSE English language requirement through that as well. So you can sit an exam at the end of that program, and then you can meet our English language requirements, if that is what you're referring to, yes. And I can send you a link again in the chat. So, yeah.
Thank you. Paula has a question about, she's asking, is there any financial requirement to apply? Do we have to provide any document to prove our financial capacity in order to be granted a residence permit for study purposes?
So that would be for your visa application to come to the UK. So there are some requirements when you're applying for your visa. You need to show, yes, that you can finance your stay in the UK and your degree program. And we have information about this on our visa advice pages. So it's not something, again, that I can advise you on, but our visa advice team can give you more information. And we have guides on the website that you can access.
Thank you. Jorge is asking, is the IELTS UKVI acceptable to apply for LSE?
So again, you don't need it in order to apply to LSE. You can apply without it. You don't need to provide it. But as long as you're taking the IELTS academic, that's going to be fine. Yeah, UKVI is the one that you need for the visa, but in most cases they coincide. You can do the IELTS academic and it's UKVI compliant as well.
Okay, thank you. We have received a lot of questions. We have like 35 more. Let's see how many can we answer. Marta Ceballos is asking, what are the minimum bachelor's grades to be admitted to a master's degree?
So for a master's degree, if your bachelor's is in Colombia, we're looking for a 4 out of 5 generally in your bachelor's degree in Colombia. Some programs like economics require a 4.5, but it's generally just economics, and then law requires a 4.2. In most cases, it's a 4 out of 5. That's the minimum requirement. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Angela is asking, this is a good question also. Once you are accepted, does LSE offer help to find accommodation? The funding help to cover accommodation and living expenses?
Let me just bring up my, I've got a slide here for accommodation actually that I can show you quickly. So for graduate students, we have 13 graduate residences available. So you can apply for LSE accommodation if you want. You can see on the map here, so LSE is right at the center of London, and these are the different options for accommodation. We don't guarantee graduate accommodation, however. So you can apply for it. And then if you don't manage to secure a room in LSE halls of residence, then we give you support to find accommodation in the private sector. I would say the majority of our master students find accommodation in the private sector, and we give you a lot of support to find that. So we know that moving to London can be very daunting, can be scary prospects. We want to make it as easy as possible. If it's any consolation, no students end up being homeless. There's a lot of support and it's quite easy to find accommodation. When it comes to funding, I mean, LSE funding would be going towards your tuition fees. So if you get LSE funding that's based on financial need, that would be just for your tuition fees in most cases. Yeah. Now, if you get, for example, a PhD scholarship from LSE, you would be getting around £18,000 annually, and you can use that for accommodation. You can use that for whatever you like.
Thank you. Sylvia, she has a very specific case. If you are Colombian, but you have been living in the UK for some years now with a family visa, do you have to apply for a postgraduate program as a foreign student or as a home student?
Good question. So it's not going to make any difference to your application. You don't apply for, you don't apply as a foreign student or as a home student. You submit your application, and then graduate admissions assign you a fee status, which can be either home or overseas. If you disagree with your fee status classification, you can submit a fee status questionnaire, and they can reclassify you where necessary, but it's not going to affect your chances of getting a place. And you don't have to choose kind of what you're applying as, whether it's home or overseas. You just submit your application. Of course, I cannot comment on whether you're going to need, what you're going to do with your visa exactly, but that's something you can deal with if you're made an offer. There's going to be the fee status team and the visa support team to help you with this matter.
Maria Alejandra is asking, the payment for a master's degree, does the payment for a master's degree have to be done in a 100% at the beginning of the program, or is it possible to pay throughout the program duration?
So there are two options. You can either pay everything in advance or you can pay in 3 installments. So every term, there's 2 payment options basically.
Thank you. Christian is asking, what are the programs via internet, online? Like the question is, do you have online programs?
Okay, so no, our master's programs and our PhD programs are all based on campus. We don't have fully online master's programs or PhD programs.
Okay, there's an interesting question from Andrea. Is it possible to become a research assistant at LSE Economics faculty while pursuing a Master of Science?
So in the UK, generally research assistants tend to be PhD students. That's kind of the standard in the UK. But there may be opportunities for you to take on paid work on campus, and LSE Careers can help you find paid work. I don't know whether you can be a research assistant specifically in the economics faculty, but there may be other opportunities. And then LSE Careers can also help you to find relevant positions outside of LSE as well. So if you want to work part-time as an intern doing research for an organization, LSE Careers can help you to find employment in that aspect.
Okay. Andres is asking, if I don't meet the threshold in IELTS, the requirement, can LSE make exceptions or accept scores slightly below the required threshold?
Yeah, so generally you have to retake the test. So you're not going to lose your offer if you haven't, if you took an English test and you didn't meet the conditions. You can retake a test. There are generally very few exceptions to this rule. Maybe if you're made an offer very late and then there's no time for you to apply for your visa, there may be an exception, but generally you have to retake a test and make sure you meet the required scores in one sitting.
Okay, and we have a last question from Mariana.
Yeah.
Is there a maximum time limit since you last studied in order to apply?
No, so it's completely up to you. Again, we're happy to receive your application. If you graduated more than 2 years ago, we accept 1 academic and 1 professional reference. If you graduated more than 4 years ago, then we accept 2 professional references. Sorry, so that kind of is to help you to be able to apply. But apart from that, no, there's no maximum time. It's completely up to you.
And we just received a question from Jorge. Loris, are you familiar with the specialization program
with
in Colombia?
the postgraduate after the licenciado, basically, when you do the
yes, it's a short like a diploma similar. It's a 1-year program before the master. Okay. Yeah. So the question is, will the score from a specialization program be considered for the application?
Yeah. I mean, if you've done a specialization, please submit your scores. We want to see everything you've done so far. So for example, if you only include your bachelor's transcripts and then on your CV, we see that you've done a specialization, we're going to ask you for more information. We want to see what you've done. So definitely, yeah, if you've done it, please submit the information.
All right.
And also talk about your specialization in your statement because it can be relevant to your master's program. Definitely.
Great. Thank you for the recommendation. And thank you for your time, for the presentation, for answering all the questions. We had a lot of questions in this session. Y bueno, gracias a todas las personas que participaron en esta sesión. Si de pronto hay alguna pregunta que les quedó, mi recomendación es en un par de días vamos a enviar la grabación. Pueden ver nuevamente la sesión. De pronto hay información que ya se respondió durante la sesión. También recordarles que tenemos charlas del programa Crédito Beca, ya en específico de Colfuturo, el primer viernes de cada mes a las 8 de la mañana y el segundo sábado de cada mes a las 9:30 de la mañana en nuestra página web. Y bueno, muchísimas gracias por su participación. Esperamos que sigan asistiendo a todas las sesiones que vamos a tener durante el mes de agosto con más universidades invitadas todos los días, de lunes a viernes a las 10 de la mañana. And thank you, Loris.
Thank you very much,
great
everyone.
day.
And I've just posted a link in the chat. We have a live chat. So if you have any questions after today, we are available Monday to Friday to answer your questions. So I've sent the link in the chat. Thank you very much, Carolina, for hosting me.
Okay. Thank you, Loris. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Que tengan un buen día.